It was supposed to be a simple commercial shoot. Bright lights, cameras rolling, everything perfectly planned. But in a split second, something went horribly wrong. Flames suddenly erupted, and Michael Jackson was caught in the middle of it. At first, it was called an accident. Just a mistake. Bad timing. Something that could happen on any set. But over time, people started asking questions. Because when you look closely at what really happened that day, some details don't quite add up. January 27, 1984, the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles, Michael Jackson, fresh off Thriller, 8 Grammy nominations pending, was filming a Pepsi commercial in front of 3,000 people. It was one of the most controlled, most expensive, most highly produced advertising shoots in history. Nothing about this shoot was supposed to go wrong. 30 seconds that changed everything. The concept of the commercial was straightforward. Michael and his brothers would perform a Pepsi-branded version of Billie Jean on a concert-style stage. Michael's entrance would be spectacular. He would appear at the top of a grand staircase as magnesium flash bombs erupted around him, a curtain of fire and light framing the biggest pop star on Earth. It had been rehearsed. It had been timed. The first 5 takes had gone well. On the 6th take, Michael descended the staircase. The pyrotechnics fired, and something went wrong. The explosion was premature. The flash bombs detonated while Michael was still at the top of the stairs rather than further down, placing him directly in the path of the shower of sparks rather than safely below it. His hair, coated in the heavy pomade and gel that was standard for performers of that era, caught immediately. The fire spread across his scalp. Michael continued performing. He did not stop. He did not react. He danced through Billie Jean with his hair burning for several seconds before anyone reached him. A witness in the audience, Margaret Watkins, told the New York Times, "There were canisters that let off smoke. They pop and they smoke. He grabbed his head and they put water on him and took him off stage." Another witness said Michael continued reassuring people even as he was being taken away on a stretcher. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it was already too late. He was taken first to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center and then transferred by ambulance to Brotman Memorial Hospital Burn Center in Culver City. Plastic surgeon Dr. Steve Hoeflin updated reporters. Michael is quite shocked. He's fortunate that there were no injuries to his face. Medical records from his hospitalization described a palm-sized area of 2nd degree and small area of 3rd degree burns on his head. The official diagnosis was moderate to severe pain. Pepsi apologized publicly. A settlement was negotiated. The story was presented to the world as a tragic accident, a pyrotechnic malfunction on a high-pressure set. But what the public saw was only part of the story. The details that do not fit the official version. The official account of what happened on January 27, 1984, has always been simple. Pyrotechnics misfired. Michael was in the wrong place at the wrong time. An accident. Unfortunate but straightforward. And there is one detail most people completely miss when they look at that footage. We will get to it in a moment. But first, it is worth understanding what Michael Jackson himself said about what happened that night. Not what Pepsi said. Not what the director said. What Michael said in his own words, in his own autobiography.
I actually covered that story. I was a local Los Angeles TV reporter at the time. Michael Jackson and his brothers were shooting a Pepsi commercial. This, I believe, was on the 6th take of that commercial, and there were pyrotechnics. They went off too early when he was still at the top of the stairs. They weren't supposed to go off until he was down below, but a spark hit his hair, ignited.
In his 1988 autobiography, Moonwalk, Michael Jackson described the night in detail that has never been fully absorbed by the public conversation about this incident. He wrote, "The reason for the fire was pure and simple. We were shooting at night, and I was supposed to come down a staircase with magnesium flash bombs going off on either side of me and just behind me. Only later did I find out that these bombs were only 2 feet away from either side of my head, which was a total disregard of the safety regulations. I was supposed to stand in the middle of a magnesium explosion, 2 feet on either side. 2 feet from his head, in violation of safety regulations. That is not an unfortunate accident. That is a documented breach of the safety protocols that were supposed to protect him. And Michael knew it. He called it a total disregard of safety regulations, in his own words. Some have pointed out that the commercial still aired after the incident, using one of the successful earlier takes. That means by the 6th take, Pepsi already had usable footage. They did not need take 6. Others have noted that the director, Bob Giraldi, spoke to Michael just before the fatal take and asked him to change his position on the staircase. According to Michael's own account in Moonwalk, Bob Giraldi came to me and said, "Michael, you're going down too early. We want to see you up there, up on the stairs." A Los Angeles Fire Department captain who was present at the shoot told TMZ after the footage was released in 2009 that by the time the pyrotechnics went off on the previous takes, Michael was usually 2 or 3 steps down the staircase. On the 6th and final take, the take where the fire happened, he was at the top. His location had been changed. The pyrotechnics were set 2 feet from his head in violation of regulations. The director had asked him to stand higher on the stairs, and there was, according to observers at the scene, no firefighting equipment nearby. The fire was extinguished by hand. Individually, these details seem small, but together they raise uncomfortable questions. The detail nobody talks about. Here is the detail most people miss. When you watch the footage of the fire, the footage that was kept from the public for 25 years and only released after Michael's death in 2009, you are watching the full extent of what happened. And what it shows is that Michael's fast spin, a signature move, appears to have worsened the fire. His hair literally exploded in flames halfway through the turn. The spin that was trained into him over decades of performance, the instinct that made him great, became the thing that spread the fire across his scalp faster than anything else could have. The full footage had been previously unseen before his death. For 25 years, the public had a partial picture of what happened. Pepsi and Michael had agreed at the time not to release it, given its upsetting nature. When it was finally published by Us Weekly in 2009, 3 weeks after Michael died, people who watched it described being shocked by how bad it actually was. The accounts they had heard for 25 years had not prepared them for what the footage actually showed. For many, watching it changed something about how they understood the incident. According to reports, Michael himself said he thought he was dying. He said he saw visions of angels. He was 25 years old, and he was surrounded by Pepsi executives who, in his own words, were so scared they could not even bring themselves to come and check on him. What the fire did to him, the full picture. That moment didn't just end a shoot. It may have changed the entire remaining 25 years of his life. That is not a dramatic interpretation. It is the documented conclusion of the people who knew him best and who spent years watching what came after.
Start of what was a decades-then-long obsession with plastic surgery, of substance abuse, and you really can trace it, and that's why it's called the show is called what it is, about those 30 seconds. And
the burns on his scalp never fully healed. His hair never grew back properly. He underwent multiple surgical procedures to repair the damage. Procedures that, according to his hairstylist Carol Lemire, who worked with him for years after the incident, caused additional hair loss rather than restoring what had been destroyed. He wore hats and wigs for the rest of his career, not as a fashion choice, but as a necessity. He wore makeup to conceal scars. He developed a fear of fire and pyrotechnics that never left him. He suffered nightmares. He was prescribed painkillers for the burn pain. Darvocet, a drug later banned for its potentially harmful side effects. And then came the surgeries. Not just the ones to repair the burns, but the cosmetic procedures that multiplied in the years afterward. His plastic surgeon, Dr. Steve Hoeflin, who treated his burns, went on to perform multiple subsequent procedures on Michael. Some who observed him closely in later years have described the accident as the moment that began his complicated relationship with cosmetic surgery, a pattern that started as damage repair and became something else. In 1993, almost a full decade after the accident, Michael issued a public statement saying, "I have been undergoing treatment for dependency on pain medication." He attributed the dependency in that statement to the burn incident. The media in 1993, however, largely framed his painkiller addiction as a response to the child abuse allegations. According to reports and the documented timeline, the pain from the Pepsi burns had never fully stopped. Brian Panish, the attorney who represented the Jackson family in the wrongful death suit against AEG Live in 2013, said in a 2026 documentary, "He had severe pain. I believe the Pepsi commercial led to the severe downfall of Michael. He underwent extensive plastic surgery, skin grafting, where they took skin from another part of his body to fix the areas that were damaged. He had severe pain, he had debilitating pain, he had neuropathic pain, which is nerve pain in the scalp. The pain led to anxiety. It led to really, most importantly, loss of sleep." The questions that never went away. For years after the incident, the public accepted the accident narrative. A pyrotechnic malfunction. An unfortunate combination of circumstances. Nobody intended for Michael Jackson to get hurt. But as the years passed and more details emerged, the 2 feet violation, the director's instruction to stand higher, the absence of firefighting equipment, the footage that had been withheld for 25 years, people began asking different questions. Not conspiracy theories. Documented questions.
January 27th, 1984, you saw that bald spot. You could clearly see the fire on his hair. It was a very, very sad moment. I've never seen that video before.
Some have pointed out that the production had a usable take before the 6th. They did not need Michael at the top of those stairs. According to reports, the director asked him to change his position specifically for that take. Others have questioned why the pyrotechnics were placed 2 feet from his head, when safety regulations required greater distance. A fire safety expert who analyzed the footage noted that there appeared to be no standard firefighting equipment within immediate reach. The fire was extinguished by people using their hands. Katherine Jackson, Michael's mother, was deeply upset. She was particularly angered by what she described as a lack of safety precautions. She seriously considered taking legal action. Michael threatened to sue. For many, the biggest question was not what happened, it was how it happened. And specifically, who was responsible for the decisions that put the biggest star in the world in the path of a magnesium explosion with no proper safety measures in place. The footage people watch differently now. The footage of Michael Jackson's hair catching fire on the Pepsi set still exists. It is on YouTube. It was hidden from the public for 25 years. It was released 3 weeks after his death. And since it was released, people who have watched it, especially people who know what came after, describe watching it differently than they expected. They see a 25-year-old man walking into the most powerful and consequential 30 seconds of his life without knowing it. They see the moment his scalp catches fire. They see the spin that spreads the flames. They see him continue performing for several seconds before anyone reaches him. And knowing what came after, the surgeries, the pain, the addiction, the fear, the wigs, the makeup, the doctor giving him propofol in a bedroom in 2009, the footage feels different from how it felt before. The advertising executive Phil Dusenberry, one of the architects of the entire Pepsi-Jackson partnership, later wrote a memoir about his career in advertising. He titled it, "Then We Set His Hair on Fire." That is what he chose to call his book about working with the most famous person in the world. That title alone says something about how the people involved in that night processed what happened. The question that outlived the fire. Maybe it really was just a tragic accident. A split-second timing error on a high-pressure set. A pyrotechnic operator who fired too early. A direction to stand at the top of the stairs that coincided with a malfunction nobody planned. These things happen. Sets are chaotic. Accidents occur even in the most controlled environments. Michael himself called it rather than malice. He said the reason for the fire was pure and simple foolishness. Not conspiracy. Foolishness.
I don't think people understand the other side that comes with it. So they're so quick to call you strange and weird. But it's almost as if you're forced to be different.
But the documented facts, the 2-foot violation of safety regulations, the director's instruction to change position for the fatal take, the absence of proper firefighting equipment, the 25 years the footage was kept from the public, the settlement paid in private, the second $10 million deal signed with Pepsi afterward, sit in an uncomfortable relationship with the word accident, and the long-term consequences of 30 seconds on that stage, the pain that never ended, the addiction that followed, the dependency that contributed to his death 25 years later, mean that however the question of intent is answered, the question of responsibility has never been fully settled. Decades later, people are still asking the same question. Was it really just bad timing? Or was there more to that moment than we were told? So here is the question we want you to answer in the comments. After seeing the full picture, do you think the people responsible for that shoot did enough to protect Michael Jackson? The full documented story of how the 1984 incident connected to Michael Jackson's death in 2009 is on this channel. Subscribe and watch next.